All right, I've got a lot of things I need to accomplish today and a limited time to do them, so hopefully these reviews are going to be very quick. We'll see. I say that every single time, and yet every wrap-up of mine is like over 20 minutes. But this is my August wrap-up. Let's get started. Hello YouTube, my name is Isabella, and today we're going to be discussing the books I read in August, plus, quickly, something else that happened to me in August, which sucks. I got really sick in August, and I don't plan to / want to describe everything that happened, but I went to quite a few doctors in the hospital twice, but they wouldn't admit me because of things, and anxiety's been at an all-time high, and for a while I didn't read at all because I was just exhausted, and then I had to take time off work because, again, sick, so I read some stuff. I managed to complete 8 books, which is a shock to me, truly shocking, because of how much stuff that happened in August, and we're going to hopefully quickly discuss my thoughts on them. August is a bit of a blur. Some of the things haven't really stuck in my brain because of sickness, but we'll see when we get to those specific books. And yeah, we're just going to discuss them now because I don't want this video to be too long. I think my favorite book of the month was the first book I read, and one that I have really good thoughts about was Jane Steele by Lindsay Fay. This is sort of a reimagining / tale inspired by Jane Eyre. So we follow Jane sort of navigating how society wants her to behave / the way that she wants herself to behave, and kind of be a serial killer but also kind of not. She kind of falls in love. There's a lot wrapped up into this story, and it's a really special book. I do not think this is going to be a book everyone loves, because you say serial killer and you think this is a bit more thrilling, more actiony, but it's not. It's pretty slow paced. I was personally blown away by the storytelling and the prose in this. I loved the way this was written. I loved the way Jane was characterized. She was so witty and snarky, and her morals were really askew, but really clearly defined. She knew and could recognize the way that she was supposed to behave in society, and she kind of worked within that to her own benefit, and she just was so interesting as a main character. I genuinely loved her. There was also an interesting sort of romance in here with a true will they, won't they, that I really found myself rooting for. I liked a lot of the side characters, and some of the side plots I think took up a little bit too much time, but the side plots themselves were interesting, even though it does throw off the overall pace of the story. I really liked how this was thrilling and how this was sort of shrouded in a bit of mystery, and there is a sense of unease throughout the whole book because you do not know how this is going to end. She is a murderer, so you kind of fear for Jane and possible consequences she could face. I thought this was excellently well done. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I'm very glad I finally picked up this book because I've been intimidated by it for years. The final book I read before I got really sick was Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. I picked this up sort of on a whim. I've been intending to read it for a while, and I'm so glad I finally did it. This is a post-apocalyptic story in which the United States is sort of boarded off, and First Nations peoples, their lands, I think, have sort of separated them off from the rest of the world. Because of the apocalypse, demons have risen up, and our main character Maggie is a bounty hunter demon slayer. She's really badass, but she's also really lonely, pretty curmudgeonly, and then she has to team up with this, I almost said unsavory, that's not what I meant. She has to team up with this unconventional medicine man to take down these demons that are terrorizing her area, and it was a fun ride. It is incredibly fast-paced. It's just over 300 pages, and it reads super quickly. It's really entertaining. It's very brutal and dark in points, and Maggie faces a lot of really tough things both in her past and in the present. She's facing a lot of stuff, and she's kind of just trying to survive. This story is Own Voices from the Navajo / Diné tribe. I really like the dynamic between our two weird pairing where they kind of get along, they're kind of into each other. I think the pace of the story could have been slowed down a little bit to have a little bit more development in terms of character and just the general plot. Also, there was a really weird fixation on the sexuality of a young girl. Like when Maggie is younger, there's this trickster who frequently talks about her sexuality like as a child or as a teen. That made me uncomfortable and just didn't feel necessary to include. I would give a couple trigger warnings for like murder, blood and gore, loss of like family members, and again, I read this right before I got sick, so some of the details are hazy on here, and I did give this 4 stars, and I'm looking forward to continuing on in the series. All right, the Bromance Book Club by Lyssa Kay Adams. I read this when I was literally in the waiting room in the hospital, so again, details are fuzzy. This is a second chance romance between a married couple on the brink of divorce. The main male character is a famous baseball player, and they got together really young, had kids really young, and are basically kind of miserable. And so our main male character joins this romance book club in which a bunch of men kind of get together, read romance books, and discuss their like internalized toxic masculinity and how to improve their relationships. Pretty cool stuff. I like this, but again, the details are fuzzy. I definitely liked our main male character more than our female main character. I thought he was more developed. I do like the fact that both of the characters were at fault in the relationship. I forgot to quickly mention that there is representation here for a character with a stutter. The main male character, he has a stutter and sort of struggles with it, but also is like not ashamed of it. And this was a little bit preachy / ham-fisting, like lines about toxic masculinity and all that kind of stuff, which is fine, but I just would appreciate it to be a bit more subtle. I don't need the author directly telling me this is how I've internalized my toxic masculinity, blah blah blah. Like, I get it, I know, I can get it from context. I don't need it literally spelled out from characters who are just essentially mouthpieces. Our main character, the guy, he also was a little bit punchy, quick to be not an aggressor, but like he's like, I wanted to knock him out multiple times. He thought that, and it's a bit tired, especially for a book that's supposed to be dismantling toxic masculinity. I think I gave this 3 stars. It's fuzzy. I don't really remember much about the romance, to be honest. The next thing I read took fucking forever to complete. I'm glad I'm done it. It's part of a challenge for me this year, but wow, was it a pain to read during the time. That is Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. I have loved everything I've read from Jane Austen up until this point. This was my 4th Jane Austen, and ooh, she struggled with Mansfield Park. This was so meandering and so slow to like get into like plot and whatnot. This definitely details the lives of some like just like the everyday minutia and lives of these characters, and it was just too long. Way too long. I was also frustrated because a lot of the things that were the most interesting like kind of got glossed and skipped over, and I was like, no, I want to read about that, but they're like, nah, it's not that interesting. And I'm like, I did like our main character a lot. I thought she had a really sort of quiet and reserved strength behind her, which is different from some of the more feisty Jane Austen heroines that we all tend to love. And I couldn't get over the fact that the romance develops, or like things finally start happening in like the end / the epilogue. I was like, I've read 500 pages. You can't give me more of the romance during the actual story. Are you kidding me? I also did enjoy some of the scandalous parts about this. This was like, some of the things that happened in here were kind of scandalous, and I was a bit surprised for it to be in this book. That I thought was fun and enjoyed that. I think I gave this 3 stars. If I think about it harder, I might lower the rating. The first time Jane Austen has really let me down. I did not particularly like this book. All right, I also decided to pick up The Names They Gave Us by, wow, Emery Lord. This was one of the books that I put on my 20 to read in 2020, so I was like, it's time to pick it up. And I enjoyed it for the most part, but it hasn't stuck with me the way I thought it would. This follows a teenager. I think she's approaching her final year of high school, kind of trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life. And then her mother gets re-diagnosed with breast cancer, and then she sort of has to grapple with the fact that her mother might not be there as long as she always thought her mom would be with her. And it kind of deals with a loss / questioning of faith. Our main character is really religious. Her father is literally a pastor, and she kind of has navigated the world very naively up until this point, and she has to deal with some pretty tough topics and tough ideals that are possibly crumbling away from her, and I like that a lot. I like the fact that our character was naive, and as she grows along and she meets new people, she kind of has to confront her naivety and her privilege and things that she never really had to think about before she really has to consider, which I like. I think she could have acknowledged her privilege a little bit more, but this is also a teenager. I'm not going to like attack a teenager for not admitting the fact that they've led a very privileged life. I like the fact like there was a sort of found family, found friendship element. In terms of representation, there is obviously her mom has cancer. A lot of these side characters are people of color. There's also a trans side character. I did not, however, love the way this ends. I thought it was really abrupt, and just it's such an odd place that the story ends at. The main character doesn't particularly stand out to me. I didn't like really connect or like love her as a character, and a lot of this has not stuck with me the way I thought it would, and I thought this would be a lot more sort of impactful than it was. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I then decided to pick up Furthermore by Tahereh Mafi. This is my first book by Tahereh Mafi, and I've been intending to read her stuff for a long time, and I'm glad I finally did this. This is another book that is sort of inspired by Alice in Wonderland, but like not really, although you could draw some parallels to the book. And our main character, Alice, is born in a magical world that relies on and deeply values color, and she is born with no color. So she thinks that there's something kind of like wrong with her. And then she has to go on an adventure with a boy that she can't trust to try and save her father. And she kind of like goes down a rabbit hole into the land of Furthermore, which has really weird rules and is kind of like determined to keep her. This was really sweet. It was really whimsical. I really liked some of the elements of the writing, and then other elements of the writing I struggled with. I don't like when people describe things just with color. I don't mind if like color is involved in descriptors, but I don't like when it's just like the blues and the teals and the greens and whatever. And I got that a couple times and I was like, all right, I would also like a description of the land, not just the colors. But I also understand that this book has a specific interest and investment in color, or like the world is really invested in color. There's no point to that sentence, but we are moving on. Alice I really liked because she was fierce, but she made a lot of mistakes. Her and her friend really grow and have this really interesting and sweet bond. This does the sort of middle grade thing or children's thing where it's like long story building up and then the ending is crazy rushed. It's like 20 pages and everything is solved and fixed, and it's like, ooh, we needed a bit more time, please. Like, and as always, I love a story that emphasizes friendship. Themes of acceptance are always wonderful. I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. I am excited to read the sort of companion book, Witchwood. I think that's what it's called. But yeah, I did enjoy this. I'm glad I finally read it. The second to last book I completed was Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. I listened to the audiobook of this, and that was incredibly well produced, by the way. Highly recommend the audiobook. And this follows like 3 unlikely sort of heroes, 3 women who aren't valued in their society, but how their roles, how they sort of take their agency and sort of manipulate their roles to suit them, and how they're the ones that kind of have to work together to save it. And it's a very slow-paced book, and you kind of don't really know where it's going, and then you see how things get pieced together. But I really enjoyed it. There is some representation for a family that is practicing Judaism, but I don't think that is own voices. However, it does have a role in the story and how they are discriminated against. And this is also sort of an inspired tale by Rumpelstiltskin. I don't know how to pitch this better. Again, fuzzy brain. That's what I'm going to blame it on. But I really enjoyed this book. I loved how everything came together. I really liked all 3 of our main female characters and how they navigated their society and basically chose to have their own agency. I really like appreciate that. I liked the mythical creature in here that was sort of a menacing presence, and I really loved the writing in here. I loved the way that things were phrased. I could really feel the atmosphere and like the dreariness, the cold, the unforgiving nature of like the winter. That all was really portrayed super well. Loved the way this was written. I think I gave it 4.25 out of 5 stars. I very much enjoyed this book. All right, the final thing I'm not going to talk about for too long, because I didn't like it, / there was not a lot of impact on me. And that's Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. I think this was my first ever poetry collection I read, like start to finish. And I didn't like it that much. I thought the beginning was cool, and there were a couple of poems that really, really struck me. In general, a lot of these poems were very generalized, and they really said things that are like super, super basic, so I didn't find that they had a lot of impact. Like there's one here that says, "Some people are so bitter, to them you must be kindest." And I know poetry has like impact with like line breaks and all that kind of stuff, but like some of it was just way too simple for my very limited knowledge and tastes. I liked some of the illustrations in here. I think that actually really helped with some of the impact of certain poems, but for the most part I was really let down by this. I was hoping to enjoy it and I didn't. I gave it 2 stars. So August was a very interesting and crappy month. Hopefully the rest of the year is better. I'm looking forward to getting back into posting videos, although I don't know how regular I will be for a while, just because I have a lot of things that I have to catch up on, because basically for a month I was comatose. That seems dramatic. Let me know down in the comments below one of your favorite reads of August were, or if you have any opinions on any of the books that I read in August. I would love to know. But thank you so much as always for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.